Hello and welcome to our presentation for the Paseo del Rio at Taylor Yard project as part of the 100-acre partnership. We're really happy that you've joined us here tonight. Hopefully you learn something and we get some great feedback from all of you. So my name is Deborah Weintraub. I work for the City of Los Angeles. I'm the Chief Deputy City Engineer. I've worked on the river for 20 plus years, and I'm thrilled to be at this point with this particular project. This meeting is another opportunity for the community to learn from the community members about your preferences on the project. We're going to go through some feedback we got from the community in our first workshops we hosted in August. And we have done this particular presentation 2 times previously in November in person. This project was described in the implementation feasibility report. You can go to the next slide, which was a report that the City of Los Angeles did that was presented to City Council in June of this past year. The Paseo del Rio project at Taylor Yard is the first project of the 100-acre partnership. And the 100-acre partnership includes folks from the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority, from state parks, and from the City of Los Angeles. And I have here colleagues from those organizations who will be with me to answer questions later. These pictures are the workshop that we did last summer in August at Rio de Los Angeles State Parks. Some of you may have attended. So the focus of this particular presentation is to present the 3 design alternatives that we've developed based on the feedback we got from this workshop in August, and to get your feedback on those 3 design options. Next slide. So before we proceed, we have a Spanish translator, Aldo, with us today, who, if you need Spanish translation, he's going to tell you in Spanish how to go to the Spanish translation room so you can listen to the presentation in Spanish. So I hand it over to Aldo.
Buenas noches a todos, bienvenidos a esta reunión. Y para las personas que deseen escuchar y participar en esta reunión en idioma español, en unos momentos más va a aparecer en la parte de abajo de su pantalla un icono en forma de un globo terráqueo. Una vez que vean ese icono en la parte inferior derecha de su pantalla, hagan clic sobre el icono y va a aparecer las opciones de inglés, English, o español, Spanish. Por favor, hagan clic y seleccionen español y yo les estaré esperando en el canal de español para que podamos tener la interpretación en vivo. Muchas gracias. Contigo, Deborah.
Thank you, Aldo. So we lost the presentation, Joey, so we'll go back to the housekeeping slide. So I just wanted to let everyone know that this meeting is going to be recorded so that we can post it on the website, and interested members of the community who couldn't make it here tonight could view the presentation later. For the first part of our meeting, cameras and microphones will be muted. There will be an opportunity to provide feedback to the team, both in breakout rooms that we're going to have to go through the questionnaire and at the very end of the presentation. But we do have the question and answer icon at the bottom of your screen enabled, and you could insert questions or answer, and we can reply to them in that Q&A icon area. Okay, the next slide, which is our agenda. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to tell you what we heard from the first workshop last summer when we were at Rio de Los Angeles State Parks. We're going to give you an update on remediation as we have done previously. Then we're going to go through the 3 design alternatives. Then we're going to break out into breakout rooms and do a more intimate conversation with different groups. And there will be breakout rooms in Spanish if you prefer to be in a Spanish-speaking breakout room. And then we'll come back for a final close that. Next. So this is our overall schedule, and we're right now where that box is circled in red. We're doing another version of the design option workshop digitally. As I mentioned, we did two in November, and now we're doing another one now in January. We intend to be back in the spring with having coalesced or consolidated all the comments we got from you and come back to you with what we will recommend be the preferred design option. And this schedule then shows you what happens in the fall. There'll be another design workshop, the same as in the winter of this year. And potentially during construction, there will be workshops also just to update the community. Next slide. So now we're going to go through what we heard at the workshop in August. And I wanted to let you know that we had more than 200 community members participate, and it was a very lively event. Next slide. We had close to 800 questionnaires returned to us, giving feedback on what are priorities from the community. And these are images of the questionnaires that we distributed. Now I'm going to go through a summary of the questionnaire results. Next slide. The communities that the members of the public came from the communities primarily, as you see, from Cypress Park, LaSalle Park, and Elysian Valley. So primarily from the communities that are close to the project site. But we also had pretty broad participation from other communities, even a couple of folks from South Pasadena. So it's a good spread of people and focus on people who are really local to the site. Next slide. In terms of the ages of people who attended, the majority of the people were between the age of 26 and 45. And they tend towards the younger folks, and that's a good sign too, because we hope we're building this park for the future. Next slide. We asked people, how do you arrive at the river? And as you can see here, the majority told us that they come through in a personal vehicle, or they walk. So it's primarily personal vehicle and walking. Some people came by bicycle, and we also heard people responded to us saying, please provide better public transit to the site. Next slide. We asked the question of who do you bring with you to the river? And primarily we heard that people bring friends, they bring children, and they bring dogs. Next slide. We then asked, what were your 3 preferred activities that you would like to see happen on this site? And the top 3 were enjoying nature, water conservation demonstrated in native gardens, and sunset viewing. We also had an opportunity for folks who were replying in Spanish to give us written comments. And we heard from some of those written comments that there was a high priority for bird watching amongst the Spanish speakers who were at the workshop. Next slide. In terms of education activities on the site, we said, what would be your 3 preferred activities? And what we heard back was environmental youth programs, outdoor environmental center, and outdoor art classes. And as you can see, there are some other preferred activities listed below. We'll show you all of these consolidated, and we think we can satisfy a lot of the objectives that we heard from the community. Next slide. In terms of health and wellness, we said, what are your preferred activities? And the top 3 were walking, relaxing, finding peace, or biking. We also had a number of folks who said they would like to have Zumba classes on the site. Next slide. So from the social gathering and eating activities, the priorities were family gatherings, picnics, or local farmers markets. And for the Spanish speakers who wrote in responses, we heard a high priority feedback in Spanish for quinceañera activities, community activities of that sort. Next. For art, culture, and events, people would like to see movie nights on the site, music concerts of some sort, and an area or space for outdoor performances. Next. In terms of amenities, which is not unusual for projects, public open space like this, the most important amenity we heard was for restrooms. But we also heard a priority for shade structures or pavilions and for benches or places to rest and sit. And as you can see, there in each of these are other categories that rated high as well. Next slide. So this is a consolidated view of everything we heard. And you can see the top 5 are restrooms, family gatherings, shade structures, environmental youth programs, and movie nights. And the next 5 were enjoy nature, walking, picnics, water conservation demonstrated in native gardens, and benches. Further down, there was an interest in outdoor environmental center, outdoor art classes, water stations, local farmers markets, and a music concert area. And then sunset viewing, relaxing, finding peace, outdoor performances, habitat restoration, biking, and bird watching. This divides the feedback we heard into different categories. We believe that we can provide almost all of these in our site design, and that really is our goal, to be inclusive of all these activities. But we did want to hear what were most important to the public, and this summarizes that. Next slide. We also asked people what species they were interested in seeing us support with our landscaping on the site, and there was a high percentage of responses saying we'd really interested in seeing monarch butterflies. But then the next highest were just providing environments for birds on the site. And then as you see, others answered some other categories of species they'd like to see on the site, even a snake ranked amongst some categories. But we particularly focus here on birds because you'll see in some of our suggestions later for a shade structure, we're really looking at birds as one of our primary clients for the site. Next. So we asked people what were their favorite parks in Los Angeles or anywhere, and this kind of graphic shows you what we heard back. People said Griffith Park, their most favorite, Rio de Los Angeles State Park next, LA State Historic Park, but also they ranked things such as Sycamore Grove Park or Elysian Park fairly high as well. Next. So we asked folks what best describes the words that you would use for what this park should feel like. And the feedback we got was members of the public wanted it to be peaceful. They want it to be safe and secure. They want it to be natural, a natural open space, but also fun and beautiful. Next slide. Out of this, there are key themes that develop, and the key themes were enjoying nature, having a peaceful environment to enjoy in the middle of the city, providing educational opportunities, and creating spaces for multi-generational gatherings and for community gatherings such as movie nights. So these pictures kind of prefigure the kinds of activities that we're going to be designing for. Next. So a remediation on, an update on remediation. And this is information that we have presented in the past, but if you go to the next slide. So we continue to let you know that the site is contaminated. We have done a fair amount of study of what the contaminations are, and I will show you that information shortly. We are working under the oversight of the Department of Toxic Substances Control, which is a state department, and they have to approve all our work plans on the site. We also, though, will be following guidelines and regulations from the South Coast Air Quality Management District and the Los Angeles Regional Water Quality Control Board, and those will primarily be about construction activities related to dust and controlling emissions and particulate emissions during construction. Next slide. So as we've discussed in previous presentations, the site is contaminated. And the primary contaminants, as you see here in these diagrams of the site, are lead, diesel, and volatile organic compounds, or VOCs. So these maps show you, the darker the color, the areas of greatest contamination for these materials that represent contamination. And as you can see, the left-hand side of the site and sort of middle right are the areas where we see the greatest contamination that we will have to address in our design and construction work. We also did, in order to characterize the site, we did 22 groundwater samples, we did 452 soil gas samples, and 645 soil samples. So we've done a lot of testing and characterization. The information that we produce is all available on DTSC's, the Department of Toxic Substances Control, EnviroStore website. It's also available on the Taylor Yard G2 page. Next slide. So there are three major factors that figure prominently as we proceed with design work. And one is contamination, which is why we stress it in our presentation to the public. The other is the area that the MRCA, the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority, bought from the city of Los Angeles. And on the left-hand side of this site plan, you see something that says MRCA boundary, and it's a dotted shape. So that left-hand side of the site is an MRCA-owned easement. The other area that impacts our design layouts is part of looking at the opportunities on the site during the 2.5 years that we worked on the implementation feasibility report. We concluded that long-term, it would be ideal if we could do an island that bridged between this site and the site to the right, to the left, which is owned by state parks and called G1. So you see a kind of oblong shape that's dotted in, and that represents a potential future island. One of the reasons for doing an island is to create more of a rich habitat environment, which you get when you have a relationship between land and water. So that kind of off-stream water course would create that opportunity. We're not doing an island right now. That's a future project when additional funds are identified, but we're designing what we're doing now to accommodate that in the future. Next slide. So this slide shows our general schedule moving forward in terms of environmental documentation and a response plan to DTSC. At the same time that we're starting design in the spring, we will be preparing environmental documentation for the Department of Toxic Substances Control. And we hope to start remediation and construction in the winter of 2025. So during that period between this spring and 2025 will be a period of working with DTSC to get an approved remediation plan from that agency. Next slide. So this kind of puts all the constraints together. It shows you layered the three major contaminants, which of the areas are of greatest concern, and those are the areas that are circled in red. It shows you the MRCA boundary easement on the left-hand side, the area that the easement that the MRCA owns, and it shows you a kind of graphic of a potential future island that we'd like to accommodate for. Next. So now we're going to get into talking about the three alternatives that we want your feedback on today. Next. This diagram shows you the components that we're currently doing in this project. And we're not doing the entire site. We're doing approximately 12 acres. That's what we have funding to do at this moment. So on the right-hand side, you see the roadway that comes in to the site, and you see a kind of oval shape that's labeled Paseo del Rio Entry Plaza. I see that's misspelled, but anyway, Paseo del Rio Entry Plaza. And that will be a welcoming space, an area for community gathering and restrooms. Then all along the river's edge, we're doing a walkway. And this walkway, in coordination with the site to the north of us, the Bowtie G1 parcel, will continue all across our site, which is G2, and G1, which is owned by state parks. And we've been collaborating with them on the components of the walkway. This will be a mile-long walkway. It's a very important part of the project. Another part of the project that we have funding to do is that kind of long, skinny oblong that diagonally crosses this site plan. And that's a water quality feature. It's funded through a different funding source. Basically, it will allow us to take stormwater from some stormwater drains that exit onto or near the site, run it through a treatment wetland system, and then return it to the river in a cleaner state. And it creates very rich habitat on the site, as well as an area for public viewing. So those are the three components of the project right now: the entry plaza, the walkway along the river, and this water quality area that will diagonally cross the site. And this is a general diagram. Next slide. So we wanted to show you some pictures of precedents of what we think the look and feel of the landscaping will be like. Some of it will be, as this water quality feature will be an intermittent wetland, wet when it rains, dry a good part of the year. We will have pollinator meadows where the butterflies will thrive. We'll have a mixture of coastal sage, scrub, and chaparral. There'll be riparian scrub woodland and oak woodland. So this is kind of the feel of the landscaping that we're hoping to add to the site. Next. And then precedents in terms of activities for people, nature-focused gathering areas, walking and jogging in a rich natural space, elevated walkways that will allow you to experience nature but not damage it, and potentially areas like you see a tilted plain here that is a little more traditional area for a family maybe to picnic or a place to just sit and rest. Also, seating is very important. Next. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the water quality feature or the wetland feature will be intermittent wet. So it's going to be designed to be both habitat rich during the wet season and also during the dry season. Next. One of our primary goals is to increase biodiversity on the site. And the way we do that is by providing fresh water, providing food resources for the animals that we hope to attract to the site, including nectar, berries, nuts, and seeds, and then providing areas where particularly the birds can nest and stay on the site. So this habitat focus needs this whole panoply of elements to happen. Next. So to create a Southern California riparian corridor, we need areas that are wet. We need areas where we have a biodiversity buffer from the middle of the slide. And then we need other kinds of environments that provide resources for other kinds of animals. So we need this whole cross-section of opportunities to be brought back to the site to make it rich with nature. Next. And then with an interest in bringing butterflies and other pollinators back to the site, there will be landscape features, including the plant choice, as well as using some of the river rocks that we've stored on site to create areas for insects and other animals to burrow and to live, to have places to be out of sight. Next. As I mentioned, the walkway along the river, the Paseo walkway along the river, is a really important component of the project. And it will be a cross-section that will be something like this cross-section you see here, where part of it will be decomposed granite. We hope to bring as many trees as possible into this area. There will be an area that will be paved with concrete, and that allows us to provide ADA compliant access for members of the public. Then there'll be a buffer zone, which will be habitat rich and rich with landscaping. And then at the outer or the inside edge, there will be a fence, which we hope will be largely invisible to the public, but it will keep people on the areas of the site that will have been remediated and will be open to the public. You can see after the slope, we have these existing high voltage transmission lines that the Department of Water and Power has running across the site, and those will remain. Next.
Hey, Deborah, I'm going to show the video at this point, and then we'll transition back.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you for your interest in the Paseo del Rio at Taylor Yard project. This project is a joint effort of the 100-acre partnership, which includes the City of Los Angeles, California State Parks, and the Mountains Recreation and Conservation Authority. The Paseo del Rio at Taylor Yard project includes a 1-mile public use greenway, an entry plaza, and a water quality feature that supports natural habitat. The project will also provide amenities such as trails, native habitat areas, health and wellness activities, gathering spaces, a pavilion with restrooms, outdoor classrooms, and scenic overlooks. Paseo del Rio at Taylor Yard will benefit the surrounding communities and region while increasing access to the Los Angeles River. To date, we have hosted 2 community workshops to inform and engage the community. Our goal is to collect your input on the proposed design options. To obtain your feedback, we are asking you to complete a questionnaire. This video will review 3 proposed design alternatives with the hope that it will help inform your responses to the questionnaire. From the feedback received from the community, we've developed 5 key themes to guide development of the project design alternatives. These are enjoying nature, environmental education, multi-generational, peaceful, and community gathering. In alternative 1, which we call mounds and valleys, there is a sloped lawn that will provide an area to sit and view the sunset. It will also feature a large seating area along the greenway with views of the LA River. The water quality feature in this alternative is designed for water to flow as a meandering stream and spill into pools on both sides. There are also additional walking paths that go along both sides of this habitat area. This design alternative includes an entry plaza with a pavilion which is oriented toward the river and will provide shade in the afternoon. The second design alternative is called Grooves and Bridges. It includes a seating terrace along the river within a habitat zone. The water quality feature in this alternative has 3 streams that run within the wetland habitat, surrounded by habitat hills. This alternative also includes a walk along the river and a walk from the entry plaza past a pollinator hill to a footbridge that crosses over the water quality feature. In this option, the pavilion is located at the northern edge of the plaza and will provide shade in the afternoon. Alternative 3 is called Edges and Overlooks. This alternative will have a small seating area along the greenway that overlooks the river. There will be a path and sloped walkway that will take visitors to an existing historic rail car turntable. In this alternative, water will zigzag through river rock walls and planted habitat berms. There will be a path along the water quality feature with access to overlooks into the habitat zones. The pavilion in this alternative will serve as a gateway from the entry road and will provide morning and midday shade. Thank you for your interest and participation in the planning of the Paseo del Rio at Taylor Yard project. We hope that you will take a few minutes to complete the questionnaire. The community's input is key to the success of this project and towards helping the project team develop the final preferred design. We hope that your voice will be a part of the conversation. The questionnaire can be accessed online at 100acrepartnership.org. You can also sign up for our newsletter and stay informed by visiting us on Instagram and Facebook.
Thank you. We're going to go back briefly to a few more slides. So I think I've talked about this. Next slide. In some of the schemes, there's some widened areas along the river's edge to provide more room for walking and for sitting in nature. Next slide. These are the three options which the video just went through. In particular here, the black area, the dotted black area shows you kind of three alternative locations for the entry pavilion. And I'm going to go through that a little bit. Next. I will say that when you get to filling out the questionnaire, you don't have to pick one whole scheme. You can pick aspects of a scheme. So these are three alternatives from the left to the right of how the pavilion could be oriented. On the left-hand side, it's oriented towards the river. In the middle, it's oriented more towards the open space. And on the right, it's kind of a gateway structure. Each of these schemes provide the same amenities, which are an event plaza / parking area, shade with a pavilion overhead, restrooms, a utility and office room, and also a sink to use. So next slide. In looking at these alternatives, we looked at the feedback we got for the kind of programming, and this just shows you on the left-hand side, you see typical 8x8 little tent structures that could be set up for a farmer's market. In the middle, you see if you were to do an event or gathering, how tables might be arranged where food trucks could park. And on the right-hand side, you see two layouts for a movie night, a smaller one completely under the pavilion, or a larger one that would spill out into the parking and events area. Next slide. So we've been talking about precedents. We had heard from the community an interest in kind of referencing the historical use of the site because there are many community members whose parents had worked at the rail yard. So maybe referencing the kind of steel construction that used to exist and softening it with natural materials such as wood. So these are precedent images of some of the materials that we might use for the pavilion. Next slide. As I mentioned earlier, one of our primary clients are the birds. So we took a look at precedents around the world where people accommodated bird habitats to welcome them. And these are some examples. Next slide. So an early idea we have is for the roof structure of the pavilion to allow space for birds to nest, to perch, to raise children, raise little birds. And this was a diagram of, it's a section of what the roof might look like. On the next slide, you see this in more 3D detail where maybe we build in wooden nesting boxes or areas that we can add landscaping or wooden perches where the birds can sit. So we're looking to have this roof really be a rich habitat environment for birds. One of the reasons we're so focused on birds is we're on the Pacific Flyway for birds. It's a really rich environment that many birds pass through. Next. I know I'm running over a little, so I'm going a little fast. I'm sorry. And here's a sketch. These drawings are done by Euler Wu, who are our architects on the project. Here's a sketch with landscaping and a pavilion roof structure of what it might look like. Next.
So first and foremost, thank you everyone for joining us this evening and for participating in each of the breakout rooms. Want to take a quick moment and maybe ask each of the facilitators if there was any main topics or main themes that they heard in each of the rooms before we let everyone go and talk about next steps for everyone. So I know we have a couple of facilitators still here with us.
Well, I'll go first. Some of the concerns or questions we got was an interest in seeing more of the topographic development of the site, being clear about the changes in elevation, a concern about water use on the site, and another concern about varying the path along the river more than is currently shown. And I'll pass it on to the next.
Yeah, so I know that we also had Sarah Rascon, Sarah Kevorkian, Luz, and Brian serving as some of our facilitators. Any thoughts you'd like to share with the team?
Sure. From breakout room 3, some comments consisted of the river path and bike uses. There is a desire, if not park, for this to be a bike trail, at least for us to have bike amenities. And likewise, some sort of security, if at all, so that individuals who visit the site can feel confidence in leaving their bike. Also, with that said, encouraging of transit modes other than vehicular to access the site. So with public transit, ensuring that there's a stop nearby off San Fernando and adequate signage, as well as bike signage and parking, as I stated. Lastly, 2 things. There was a request for ample and generous seating, both for ADA and visitors alike, and accessibility and shade is important. And lastly, individuals want to feel safe and secure while also being able to share the space with unhoused individuals who are visitors. So just making a safe public space.
All righty. Thank you, Sarah. Brian, Sarah, or Luz, and anything that you heard in your rooms?
Actually, I'm going to defer to our community member, Sona, if they're still on. They wanted to report back.
Let's see. Let me see if I see Sona.
I see Sona. She needs to be unmuted.
Oh yeah, give me 1 second. Hey, Sona, I just asked you to unmute.
Yes, thank you. I was trying to unmute myself. Okay, hi everyone. So we heard the following comments in our breakout room. One of the drawbacks that one of the members noticed was that the 3 schemes introduced seemed to be similar with different programming. And the water quality improvement scheme seemed like cutting the site into 2 sites. And it was said that we have a fear that maybe we won't be able to conserve the water and capture reuse for later, but the project management team noted that we will be able to actually do that and to capture and store the water for the habitat. And there was also concern about safety. The Rio de Los Angeles Park is gated, and gates reduce, they may be barrier for entry and also for time, but at the same time, we need to think about the safety of our community, keep them safe from any types of animals. We heard about bike parking. Maybe I'll also maybe provide clear legends on the maps. It would be helpful. It was noted that the design, if we choose the design will help determine what remediations are. And as the sites are being remediated in phases, they will also be constructed. I guess that would be all for our team. Thank you.
Thank you, Sona. Brian or Luz, are you there with us?
Hey, Joey, I can go.
Yes.
So this is Brian from MRCA. In room 4, we had a lot of questions, and they were great questions. Questions about how big are the hills going to be, and really a desire to have hills, to be able to use them to sort of enjoy looking out with your friends, viewing opportunities, being able to see the river. There was questions about really what would the wet and dry look like, and when it is dry, which a lot of the year likely would be, if that would still be beautiful, like what would that be like, especially around design 3, which had sort of these gabion these rock walls that would help to filtrate the water. There were questions about the number of discussion was talking about, could people walk into the habitat spaces, and would would foot traffic be really limited to the paths, or would you be able to enter into those? And additional, what are the boundaries going to look like, both inside, looking into the natural areas, and then outside in the area that is a phase that hasn't happened yet? What would that look like? And I just reported for everyone that we don't know. We haven't gotten that far, but probably it could be different inward versus outward. And then also there was the discussion or suggestion of maybe the round table could be a skateboarding area if it were to have a slope. There is a skateboarding community around the site, and that is would be a great place for youth to be able to use, as well as having mobility options of active transportation. And the question of just, was every option consistent with providing active transportation? And then one thing that I was excited to hear about is someone asked, when would they be able to volunteer at the site, help with planting and things? And I said that it's something we haven't gotten to, but we would love to know if you're interested in, when we get to that point, that we would be happy to coordinate on that. And you can participate through emailing us at info@100acrepartnership.org. And we did talk about remediation and what is that timeline? What might that look like? And how, and what will the decision making be around how much to clean up? And that's something that hasn't happened, that will be happening in future meetings with DTSC.
All righty. Thank you, Brian. Lucy, there? Or yeah, you want to share what happened in your room, or any thoughts?
Yeah, sorry, Joey. I was in the room with Sarah, so we were in the same room.
All righty. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on this Wednesday evening for virtual community workshop hosted by the 100 Acre Partnership for the Paseo del Rio at Taylor Yard project. Just a few notes that we want to leave you with before we call it a night. As shared within each of your breakout rooms, if you've not had a chance, we have our questionnaire. It will be open until February 3rd. So please take a moment to provide us your feedback. We will be hosting a follow-up community workshop 3 later this spring. And then to keep up to date, please visit 100acrepartnership.org for project updates. You can also stay in touch with us via our social media. And what we will do is make sure that if you did not have a chance to take the survey, we'll send everyone an email with the survey link, as well as the project video that we shared earlier this evening. So more than anything, thank you. And we hope to hear from you soon. Have a good evening. Thank you.